Hi everybody, this is Liz Bucheit of SamiSupplies.com, and if you're watching this video today, you've probably done a few of our projects in the past. Today I'm going to show you how to make a 4-braid double strand bracelet that's a variation on a previous kit that we've done. This has a little more of kind of an Irish or Celtic background, but it's still in all the way you actually divide your strands. So let's get into it. What I'm holding here are some examples of some things you can do regarding a 4-braid strand here. Now, our earlier kits have been a double braided, sort of like a regular braid like this. We offered those for many, many years, and after lots and lots of students and letters and phone calls, etc., we've had requests to actually show you different types of braid. Now, not just to give you written directions, but I find for most of my students and a lot of my clients, the biggest question is, how much material do I measure out in order to do a 4-braided piece? These all have a double strand. Some of them have introduction of color in them, which are all things that you can do down the road. But for right now, I'm just going to take you through the very, very basics of a 2-stranded 4-braid variation. This is a really beautiful braid, and this is, again, as I mentioned before, a bit of an Irish sort of weave. This is very much like the 4-braid kit. The only difference is that we're going to divide these strands up a bit differently, and we will start out by measuring out 3 strands of the 0.35 tin thread to approximately 19 inches. That's what we've got here. But we are going to measure out one of these strands to 24 inches, and that will become apparent as to why we've got one a bit longer than the other 3 in just about a minute. Take your clamp, your hobby clamp that you have here, handy dandy, available at SamiSupplies.com, and pick a side with the hole on it. Attach to your table. Make sure this is nice and snug. Then you're going to take your very fancy-dancy paper clip here, pick a side to hook, and just make sure that your hook is actually vertical. I mentioned earlier that we had 3 strands that were 19 inches here, and we had 1 strand that was actually 24 inches. You're going to take the 24-inch piece and you're going to double this over. Get this even first. That's number 1. Give it a little pinch here too. And it's all right if this drops down. That's totally fine. Next, you're going to take your 3 strands here. Even these up and double them over. And again, you can just give this a little pinch. Okay, here's the big reveal. We're going to take these 3 strands here and we're going to crisscross them right over left, just like this. And we're going to take our other strands here, and starting with the single strand out to the left, we're going to bring this to the center. And single strand out to the right. This is going to be our sheep again. Our sheep's going to go under the fence and over the hedge and crisscross in the middle. Now, granted, this looks a little funny, but the pattern will become evident in just a moment. The 3 strands we've got to the left, we're going to bring to the center. And it's going to be a little difficult. You got to keep all of these guys straight. Just like that. And the same thing out here. Sheep's going to go under the fence, over the hedge, and crisscross. Now, don't be afraid to pull these strands a little tight. Start with the left, cross over that 3 patch there. I'm pulling this a little tight, so I'm going to flatten that out just a little bit. I'm going to take my single strand. My sheep's going to go under the fence, over the hedge, and pull. Outer edge to the center, under the fence, over the hedge, and pull. And now you can start to see a nice pattern forming. Left to the center, right under, and over. Oh, I'm starting to lose a little bit here. And remember, make sure you've got all of those strands lined up and perfectly straight before you pull to either side. Left to the center. Sheep's going to go under the fence, over the hedge, and pull. Single to the center. Sheep under the fence, and over the hedge. Now, one thing about this particular design is that it's very dense, so it's very important that you pay attention to your tension. And you'll need to be pulling all of this a little towards you as you start to create length. Sheep goes under the fence, over the hedge, and pull. And I'm pulling this relatively tight. I actually like to see a little space here in the center, but this is kind of just a personal preference. And remember to pull the braid towards you as you continue weaving. Again, keep those 3 strand sections side by side. All of those strands should be nice and parallel to each other. No overlapping and no rolling. Now this is a lot to handle until you get about halfway down. Remember to pull when you have both sections out to the side, not beforehand. And all of this should be very consistent down to the side. As I've mentioned in other videos, this top portion will look a little funky, but don't worry about that because this is going to end up in the body of your bracelet or whatever you decide to attach the trim onto. And again, I'm going to kind of Martha Stewart this to the end, so please don't judge how fast I'm going by how fast you should go. Take your time. All right, I'm at the bitter end of my braid here, so got some uneven ends, not a big deal. I'm going to pinch my braid very firmly between my index finger and my thumb and pick one of these little strands off to the side, unwrap the wire. I think this is the funnest part of the whole thing. And we're going to gather all of these guys down here into a fringe. Wrap front to back or back to front, does not matter to me. But you're going to only wrap this around twice and just give this a little press. And then you're going to bring all of these strands down here and cut about 1/4 inch from here to here. Now you can see we're going to get about, oh, that's nice. We got about 7 inches. So I braided this a little more loosely, but about 6 3/4, 7, this is good for this. And if you decide to put this trim on something like other than a bracelet, no problem. But depending upon the length of the bracelet, you'll want those 2 centimeters hidden on either end. And you can also trim off a little more if your braid's a little too long. Remember, we can always make it shorter, but we can't add to it after we've woven it.
Excellent.
Some of you may have already downloaded our How to Make Saami Bracelet PDF, which will actually take you through step by step on how to make one of our most basic bracelets, which is the double-stranded 3-braid bracelet. But quite frankly, some of the steps will remain the same for everything that you do. So I've actually measured out a couple strips of reindeer hide. This is the alder or tan, which is a really beautiful kind of color, so that when I start stitching this for you guys, you can actually see it. But I'm making one that's a little bit longer. I ended up with a little longer braid here. So you will see here on the back, I'm gonna have a little bit of excess, which I'll cut off. But this is really about all I need poking through the opposite side here. We don't wanna have this come all the way to the edge. So a good rule of thumb with this, and again, it's just a rule of thumb, but with most of these bracelets, we like to measure in approximately 2 centimeters from the edge and make a little mark with the leather here, and do that on the opposite side as well, right here. And this is kind of important. There is a polished side to the leather and a suede side. You can choose which one, however, the finished side has a little bit of waterproofing on it. You're going to fold this lengthwise, and again, you can find a lot of these steps in our How to Make a Saami Bracelet downloadable PDF. And you'll take your scissors, and you're going to make a little cut here, and I mean a little cut. Make this smaller rather than larger. This only needs to be wide enough to accommodate the width of your braid without smushing the end up. Okay? The next step is to actually thread the braid through. So from the sueded back, we're going to take the loop end. That's the easiest. I'm gonna pull this through. It almost starts to looking like a bracelet. And again, sometimes I braid a little bit tighter. I might end up with a little bit extra length, but in all honesty, I only really need about 1/4 of an inch of this here on the other end. We need a little real estate from here to here, as you know from the other directions, to add our loop and our button at this end. So I'm just gonna leave this long. As you can see, I'm gonna have a little, but I'm not gonna trim this until I actually am done stitching. Sometimes you can like stitch so tightly that this can start to foreshorten. So we just wanna make sure that we have all the stitching done before we actually do that final trim, if you have access. Or excess, excuse me. You need access and you need excess. All right. Now the way I do this is I actually unthread. I swing out the loop end out like a barn door, and you can use rubber cement, you can use Elmer's glue. This is a little bit of tacky glue. I'm not a huge fan of this, however, it does get the job done and it's a lot less toxic to breathe. And you're just going to make a very thin line down the center of your strip. And I have not unthreaded this. This is still in place because now I have to reintroduce this end in to the end here, and I've got plenty of time to actually center this. Now if you need to kind of like hold this up vertically and take a look at your braid, and you need to add a little bit more, you can do that with a toothpick. But literally, it's best to use less rather than more. If you are a mad gluer, it is really a drag to have to take a water and a Q-tip and clean up all of your glue. So this literally is just supposed to be an assist. All right, we're going to thread up our needle. I'm going to show you how to stitch these on, this particular braid on. These are fabulous number 11 needles that we carry on SamiSupplies.com, and this wonderful 2-bird monofilament type transparent thread that we use. So whether you are a really fantastic seamstress or a stitcher or not at all, this is magic for those of us that aren't that great at sewing. So don't let that deter you. You will need to add several sections of thread while you're sewing, because if you again have looked at any of our other projects or done any of our bracelet kits, this stuff is wonderful, and it's horrible because it will disappear when you do your stitches, but it also can just disappear and you can't find your place anymore while you're sewing. So again, this actually has a bit of memory from the coil, so you're going to want to smooth this through your fingers and pull it so that it ends up being a bit straight. And I've measured out only about 18 inches. That's kind of what I allow myself, because otherwise anything much longer and you're just going to spend all your time unraveling it. All right, now I'm ready to actually thread my needle. So I'm going to take my number 11 here. And I only need one, and once I have my needle threaded, what I'm going to do is something that kind of is counterproductive as far as like regular sewing, if we're sewing with regular thread. But remember, we're not sewing with regular thread. I'm actually going to tie a double knot right up to the eye of the needle here. So go ahead and make a loop. Pull your strand through here and pull it nice and tight once, and one more time, and once you have that done, where you have just a little bit of a tail here, you're going to pull the needle so that knot ends up being right at the base of the eye. I don't care how you get a knot in the other end of your thread, but you're going to need to make a knot. So I just literally learned this year. Hold your needle horizontal and grab the end where the eye is, and take the other end of your thread here and line it across the back of the needle with the end pointing towards the eye, and grab all that on the end. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to coil this around once, twice, 3, 4, I like 5. Tilt this up, grab that entire coil, pinch it tight, and pull the needle through your fingers. And you will end up with a knot. Leave a little tail on here. Once I have my knot done and I have it anchored to the back, I'm going to go ahead and start stitching. Now, in previous braids, this would run across these two strands, but we're not going to do that with this type of braid. We're actually going to separate these two strands to the right and pull our thread through and kind of move this back. And I'm going to go to the left here. And I'm going to separate these two strands like this and stitch. Now this zigzag way of sewing is explained in, again, the downloadable PDF version of how to make a Saami bracelet. But I'm coming up very, very close to the edge of my braid. The only thing that's different is that I'm not going across these two strands like with thinner braids. I'm actually separating these two so that the invisible thread nestles down in between the coils of the wire, the coiled wire. And as you can see, it does disappear. So you're going to do that all the way to the end. If the thread comes across these two, sometimes it actually, and you don't pull it tight, it's too long of a stitch. It's a little easier and a little safer to actually pull that nice and tight, and then it will disappear. Keep your thumb where you're working as you work your way down. Hi again. I showed you in the previous video for the double 4 braided bracelet, one of our kits here, how to do some of this stitching. I have to tell you, if we're doing a single braid, The actual stitching on with the invisible thread is pretty much the same MO. So let's get a close-up of this so I can show you, if you're doing your Celtic braid right now, exactly how you're going to stitch that on. Here's my thread. It's come through the leather here, and instead of going all the way into the center of the actual braid, I'm going to separate the outer edge here and make my first stitch. And then I'm going to go to the opposite side here. And again, I'm just going to kind of nestle my needle across one strand and one strand only. Pull it nice and tight. Now, I have attached this section of 3 braid and this section here. Now when I come over to the opposite side here, I'm also going to do a stitch across this little single strand guy right there. Honestly, there are many different ways to tack these down. The main thing that you need to do is to put enough stitches in here so that the braid does not have an open pocket on the side, which can get caught on things. So there's where I'm going in next. And again, just continue down, making sure that you're hitting center of each one of these spots here and here and here. So next I'll be over here. And that's it. Mystery solved. Where do we go from here? Well, once you have your braid secured onto your leather strip, you're going to want to go and download those PDF instructions entitled How to Make a Saami Bracelet. Now, for those of you that purchase a kit, there'll be a code in there where you can get them for free. Otherwise, they are $5. But once you get those instructions, what will happen is that you will find images that will show you step by step how to sew up the back and also how to attach your loop and attach your button. And something else to keep in mind is if you see styles online that you like and you want to order individual materials, think of all of the different combinations and variations that you might be able to explore. But if you have trouble wanting to know like what to measure out or what to get, I'm more than happy to help you with that. You can send me an image, you can leave me a comment, or you can even email me. But in the meantime, try your hand at a couple of these things, and you can also send me pictures of your finished projects. I'd love to see what you're working on. And if you haven't subscribed, please do and get that sweet 20% off your materials. So happy braiding, and I'll see you soon.